Amidst the Russia and Ukraine crisis, I came across a breathtaking video of Daria Kaliniak. I just botched her name, I'm sorry. She is essentially giving a very passionate speech slash plea to Boris Johnson, essentially asking, more so begging him and Western allies to co-sign a no-fly zone and fight against the Russian military. This video it's pretty tough on the eyes and the ears, but I'm going to play it for you. I just want to give you a quick disclaimer. Check it out, and then I want to talk about it because this is going to be incredibly important moving forward.
A woman from my team is now in Bila Tserkva, and she is there with 2 kids, and Russian military is over there, and she's so much afraid that she will be shot. Kharkiv, the city where I was studying, was bombarded today, fully, the downtown square. So you're talking about the stoicism of Ukrainian people, but Ukrainian women and Ukrainian children are in deep fear because of bombs and missiles which are going from the sky. And Ukrainian people are desperately asking for the West to protect our sky. We are asking for the no-fly zone. We are saying in response that it will trigger World War III. But what is the alternative, Mr. Prime Minister? To observe how our children are, instead of planes, are protecting NATO from the missiles and bombs? What's the alternative for the no-fly zone? We have planes here, we have air defense system in Poland, in Romania. NATO has this air defense. At least this air defense could shield the Western Ukraine so that these children with women could come to the border. It's impossible now to cross the border. There are 30 kilometers of lines. Imagine crossing the border with a baby or with 2 children. I'm so glad that Samantha Power is coming here to the border from the Polish side. Let her come to the border from Ukrainian side and see that. Britain guaranteed our security under Budapest Memorandum. So you're coming to Poland. You're not coming to Kiev, Prime Minister. You're not coming to Lviv because you are afraid. Because NATO is not willing to defend. Because NATO is afraid of World War III. But it is already started. And these are Ukrainian children who are there taking the hit. You're talking about more sanctions, Prime Minister, but Roman Abramovich is not sanctioned. He's in London. His children are not in the bombardments. His children are there in London. Putin's children are in Netherlands, in Germany, in mansions. Where are all these mansions seized? I don't see that. I see that my family members, that my team members are saying that we are crying. We don't have where to run.
Well,
this is what is happening, Prime Minister.
well, thank you very much for your questions, and thank you for getting here.
All right, so that was it was moving, to say the least. It was, and that is enough to make damn near anybody uncomfortable. You saw there Boris Johnson looked uncomfortable himself. He did well to allow her to speak all the way through and really air out her grievances. But Boris Johnson, Joe Biden, the Pentagon, all of the really people that are in the highest of powers in their respective nations are pretty much in lockstep with the belief that they do not want war with Russia. Joe Biden has assured us that no U.S. troops will engage with Russian troops. That is not their objective. And that is a good thing. No matter how moved you were in that video that I just showed you. Now, that video was extremely sad. And it's extremely sad for these set of reasons that I'm about to give to you. The U.S. has, and NATO alike, has essentially damned Ukraine. And what I mean by that is what they're doing is extremely nonsensical. First of all, I take no pleasure in saying this, but the Russians are only using a fraction of their military capacity to try and crush the Ukraine at this moment. Now, one could say they've ramped up their attack, which is indeed true. We are seeing it happen. Civilian death count is just getting higher and higher, and it's climbing, and they're, attacking more indiscriminately. We see it in the news. We see video evidence of it, and it's absolutely sad and horrific. What a perilous time to be in. But the message from the West and NATO is that, oh, we will continue to arm the Ukrainians and back them and send them weapons and supplies and all this other stuff, and they'll eventually drive out the Russians and defeat them. I have news for you. That's never gonna happen. I mean, what happened in the beginning, I still can't get over. The fact that they were asking for the neutralization of Ukraine, they were asking for missiles not to be pointed at them, this being Russia, and the US deemed it a non-starter. And now here we are, and Joe Biden had the nerve in his State of the Union to say, oh, this is an unprovoked attack from Vladimir Putin. Well, when you encircle a nation the way that they've been encircling Russia, expanding NATO so far, and they don't even need to do that, well, this is the kind of response that you get. Now, it's egregious and it deserves to be condemned. It's absolutely horrific, as I just alluded to. But what did you really expect? And now we're here, and she gave us this moving speech. And I want to go through this speech. And this is absolutely important because going forward, you're going to see more sentiments like this. And what I mean by sentiments like this is people co-signing war, specifically a world war. Now, she says they're asking for a no-fly zone. That's what they're asking for. They want the West, they want NATO to declare a no-fly zone. And she says that they say, Boris Johnson and others, that this would trigger World War III. She says, well, what is the alternative? Well, the alternative should be diplomacy. Now, however much of a pipe dream that may seem to be at the moment, and I know that all of this is easy for me to say here, I'm in my safe home here in the United States of America. That's quite an obvious observation to make. But the obvious alternative, at least in my eyes, is indeed diplomacy. Why do I say that? Because if you trigger something like a world war, well, you can forget any alternative ever, because it's the end of, that's the extermination of the species. She says he's not coming to Kyiv because he's afraid. You damn right. She says that NATO is not willing to defend Ukraine. NATO is scared of World War III, but it has already started, she says. That's quite the damning statement, isn't it? I would like to respond to that remark with a quote of my own. Now, there's a dispute over who exactly said this. I'm not sure, but it doesn't matter. The quote goes as follows. When the last man who remembers the horrors of the last great war dies, the next great war becomes inevitable. Look, man, there's few people today that truly remember and understand, almost no one, the vast destruction and degradation and death that a world war can inflict upon any population. And we are now in the nuclear age where multiple nations have extreme nuclear capacities. I mean, for her to insinuate, and I know she's emotional and this is really tough on her, and she's probably lost a lot of people that she loved and, held dearly. But to insinuate that what's going on in Ukraine is anything like a world war, it's just completely false. And I would just ask, I know it's difficult, just take a step back and think about it for a second. I mean, now people like to compare this to the Second World War. Oh, Hitler was the big threat. Well, in the First World War, it was kicked off because some Archduke got murdered. Yeah, Archduke Ferdinand was killed in Sarajevo, or however you say it. Now, you might say, well, it was more intricate than that. Well, sure, of course, there's allied nations and what have you. But still, the fact of the matter is, that's what sparked the conflict. So what do you think is going to happen when we start shooting Russian planes out of the sky? Well, Russia then, I say, okay, well, we'll just bomb Germany. Germany bombs Russia in retaliation. They nuke London. We nuke Moscow. They nuke San Francisco. Congratulations. You just booked a one-way ticket to Armageddon. This is not the way to go. It definitely isn't. I mean, you have people, I believe his name is Henry Kissinger. I have his tweet here Is it? No, it's Adam Kissinger. I'm sorry, I botched his name. Not Henry. What am I talking about? The fate of Ukraine. Adam Kissinger says the fate of Ukraine is being decided tonight, but also the fate of the West. Declare a no-fly zone over Ukraine at the invitation of their sovereign government. Disrupt Russia's air ops to give the heroic Ukrainians a fair fight. I mean, this false sense of heroism once again. I'm going to pop a picture up on the screen of disabled grandmas crafting Molotov cocktails. That's not going to stop a tank. I mean, these people, we've subjected them to suicide by rejecting diplomacy in the first place, by calling Russia's ask a non-starter. This is just a very messed up and bleak situation. But all I would ask is for cooler heads to prevail and for us not to be taken by so much emotion, no matter how hard it may be. And I understand it could be incredibly difficult, especially for the people that are facing this directly. But to insinuate that what we're currently going through, or what they're currently going through, not us, in Ukraine is anything to the effect of a world war, just think about it for a second. I mean, this institutional knowledge that has been lost is so damning, and you can see it. Imagine for a second you have to ration things like butter and soap and bread. You know, your kid isn't in school anymore. Certain necessities that you could always have, you had an excess of, you don't have much of anymore. That's what war does. And people have forgotten. There isn't anybody around to remind us anymore. And so these things seem so much more possible. And it's extremely scary.